So without further ado, I'd like to be able to introduce our next speaker. Mr. Pradeep Narendran is Vice President for JP Morgan Chase, and it's my pleasure to welcome Pradeep to the stage right now.
Hello, everybody. My topic is about Agile Transformation, so it was a perfect segue, I believe, like getting Agile, right? So I know people say Agile, Agile, Agile. What's correct? How does it matter, right? As long as we can get what we want to achieve, right? So I'm going to take you through a journey that I'm not going to be necessarily talking to you, but just going to share my experiences, and then from my experiences, there would be some takeaway points for you to see, hey, this is probably something that we could look at, right? So if you come back and look at myself, where did I start off and how did I come into JP Morgan Chase? It's a pretty wide range of industries that I traveled through and on purpose. So I was in the manufacturing industry myself. I used to manufacture chemical process plant equipment on turnkey basis, which means a lot of that you are doing is what I did as well. Like, for example, heat exchangers, refineries, things of that nature. At one point, the industry that I was in deep trouble because of certain regulations, and so we had to shift gears and use the same infrastructure that we had, went into manufacturing confectionery equipment, food processing equipment. And from there on, while we were doing all of this stuff, I realized there's a lot of interior stuff that's going on within the equipment that we most often than not just guess, or from our past experience come back and say, this is probably what's happening there. It's hard to get that information. This was in the days. I'm not a spring chicken, all right? So way back then, there wasn't much instrumentation, if you may, to get the data and present it in a dashboard. So that is where I moved into information technology. I went into the plastic manufacturing extrusion industry, and from there to ExxonMobil, which was the oil industry, more in the merger and acquisition at the time when Exxon and Mobil were trying to buy each other and become one company. And from there went on to the government space with federal government. Like I was telling someone earlier, almost every building on 14th Street in DC, I have worked at different capacities for all those different agencies. And then from there, I went into a GSC at a very crucial time, 2008, Freddie Mac. You know what I mean? And then after that, I came into JP Morgan Chase. All right? So the reason I gave you all that background is because product is product. To me, math is math. 1 + 1 is 2 if I go to Canada or if I go to Timbuktu. Product is product, and people are people. You with me? It doesn't matter what product you're dealing with, there are people involved. Even if it is dog food, a person needs to buy it. Got to make the decision, right? So product is product, people are people, and people interact with products. So you need to have all of that taken into account when you're trying to create your processes, trying to develop innovation, things of that nature. And innovation, sometimes I feel like it's something that people are trying to somehow innovate. I think it should be second nature. How many of you can say my name? Pradeep. Pradeep. In the days it was pretty hard. People used to say pra and stop. So I was thrown in one of my engagements with the Department of Defense. I was thrown in to talk with 3-star generals, and I was going to talk about servers. Okay? I had no clue what the servers were about. I was more into software. So I told the guy who put me in, who was my boss, I have no idea. Why are you putting me onto this? He said, you're the only technology guy I have, so you better speak. So I went there. I had to have icebreaker. I needed to innovate. So I said, guys, can you tell me my name? And they said, Pra, and stopped. I said, let's do this together. I had them put their hands together and say, pray, and they did. And they were very skeptical. And then I said, deep. There was a moment of silence, and then they said, dip. I said, no, go deep. So they did, and we got pray deep, all put in place. I had to innovate just to be there, to get the presence, to have an icebreaker. So innovation's got to be natural. It's got to be from within, right? And so that's kind of like where I'm going with this topic with Agile, for instance. So after me, let's do a KYC. Know your customer, right? So for me to know whom I'm talking to, what my audience is like, how many of you here are Agilists? A few. How many of you practice Agile in some sort of way? So what is Agile? Is it a framework, or is it a methodology? It is a framework, right? I mean, you can have a lot of conversation around that, but the way I look at it, it's a framework of methodologies, one or more methodologies. It could be Scrum, it could be Scrum plus XP, it could be so many different things, but it's a framework, all right? So what framework of Agile do you practice in here? How many of you said you practice Agile? What kind of frameworks? Scrum? It's a methodology, okay. Frameworks. Like, do you practice DAD? LESS? Heard of those terms? Those are frameworks within the Agile frameworks. Okay, like you have the disciplined Agile delivery, you have the LESS framework, you have so many other variations of Agile, right? But then why Agile is the question, okay? So I will go further and move on. Let's get back to the basics. What is Agile? What is Agile? If you go back to the English meaning of Agile, it's basically able to move quickly and easily. Isn't that what it is? Isn't that what you as innovators want to do? Be able to move quickly and easily, and be able to present your product to the people and get what you want to get back in return, correct? If you go back to Agile software development, per the Agile manifesto, it says Agile software development refers to a group of software development methodologies based on iterative incremental development where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organizing cross-functional teams. And the reason I bring this up is most often than not, people lose the basics. We all go in and do Agile because it's the cool thing to do. Do you really need to go Agile? Probably not, right? But then if you stay with me as we go along, you'll see. Has your organization at any time done a feasibility and value study on whether or not to go Agile? Is Agile the right thing to do? Is it the right approach to take? The big question is, why Agile? Is it because it's the buzzword, or is it because you want to solve for a problem? And this is the process that will take you there easily and quickly. So as part of that analysis, have you looked at your organization's key assets? Do you have the infrastructure in place? Do you have the communications networks in place? Things of that nature. What about your organization structure itself? Is it conducive to Agile? Have you analyzed that? Is it something, is it a silo? I mean, as we talk about verticals, we've always heard about domains and verticals. Even today, we talk about verticals, right? In the Agile world, we are not concerned about, or we shouldn't be concerned about verticals. We should be concerned about cross-functional, cross-organizational structures. If not, there is a big possibility of your Agile implementation failing. All right? Then, okay, again, coming back to Agile, how many of you think that you do Agile or you have done Scrum Fall? Have you heard of this term, Scrum Fall? Scrum Fall. Yes, most organizations really do Scrum Fall, don't they? They think they're Agile, but they're really doing Scrum Fall. It's a combination, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar, it's a combination of waterfall and Scrum. Okay, two methodologies, two different approaches. And it is a sure sign of disaster. Okay? Now, have you ever looked at the funding model that you have? I mean, is it conducive? What about your brand? Does it affect your brand? Does it really mean anything to your brand, whether you're being Agile or not? Okay? Have you looked at the market that you are working with? Does it mean anything? What about your people? Is there a cultural restructuring of your internal resources for understanding, absorbing, and being able to deliver products in the Agile fashion? These are all things that any organization needs to do, a feasibility analysis, and then, only then, jump in. And this can be done pretty quickly, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Agile doesn't ever have to be perfect, right? So then, what about your regulations? What about your privacy policies? What about your data security? These are all things that you need to take into consideration. Okay? The question is, can this be avoided? The elephant in the room sometimes. Sometimes it's the elephant on your roadmap. All of this can most probably be avoided to a great extent if that first evaluation was done correctly. This is what I've learned across the board, across the industries that I've worked with. How many roles are there in Agile? For those of you who practice Agile, how many roles are there in Agile? Roles. 3 roles? Product owner? Yeah? Product owner? Scrum Master? And the team member. And the team member, right? So when we're talking about, now I'm not talking about product, I'm not necessarily talking about your customer at this point. Yes, the end product is for them, but for you to deliver what you want to deliver to them, there is a Scrum team that's involved, right? And what are those roles? Those 3 roles, right? The product owner, the Scrum Master, and the team member. That's it. Many times I get questions like, is the business analyst still relevant in Agile? What is your answer? Yes? No? Not so much? Depends? All of that is correct, okay? Because what is a business analyst? Business analyst is not a role. It's a skill set. It's a skill set to analyze what your business needs, right? Do you need a developer? Do you need a tester? Same question. If your product owner can double up to be a business analyst, so be it. But it's a skill set. It's not a role. So all of those answers are correct, right? Collaboration. We go back to our first slide. I highlighted the fact Agile success depends on collaboration. Collaboration is the key to success. If you look at these slides, I put it down like this for a purpose, is because most of you looking at it are going to say, what the heck is that? I don't understand what it is. I just want to perk your curiosity to it and let your brains, really go fast and think up all the things that you can while I give my own explanations to it. And we all could be right, and we all could be wrong. All right? But as far as this slide is concerned, I am right, because I put it together. All right, so the first slide is about ideation. Okay, so you have all these different aspects of delivering a product. And the product doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You see the T is mismatched. Doesn't matter. It's my first iteration. All right? So you look at the first one, it's about ideation, where the product owner, the DCE teams, like as in your digital customer experience teams that go out, like the person from Humana who was talking, I think she was saying that they have teams go out, talk to people. We have the same kind of processes in various different organizations that I work for, and even at JPMC. That I can tell for JPMC. Nothing else I will tell for JPMC. All right? So from there, the product owner, the product manager, the funding folks, and all of them come back and meet at the second slide where you have the intake process. And then you have from there your space management and infrastructure teams. You have your design teams, which would include your UI and backend design. You have your compliance, regulation, and legal teams. You have your development or construction teams. You have your QA, environment, and deployment teams. Collaboration has to take place at every level, at every point of time for success to happen in terms of delivery of product. It is not just collaboration between one to the other. It is between each one of them. That's what I've realized all along. Culture drives collaboration. Yes, we say collaboration is needed. Collaboration, we guys need to collaborate. It's very important. That's what our management says, right? But then what happens when it comes to things like, okay, now let's see if your Scrum team is generating more points or delivering more story points than the other Scrum team. What are you doing? You're bringing in a culture of fear. You are not keeping up with the Agile principles. Agile Manifesto very clearly says that Scrum teams should not be compared, except in the case of SAFe. If you're up to the SAFe Agile framework, then you're matured way along. Okay, that's a different story. We'll get to that later. And I'm not taking a class on Agile, so I'm just making it known as to the different things that I've seen across industries in a very similar manner, and just sharing it with you in terms of what I think is right and what is not acceptable, and within what I've learned from the Agile Manifesto and the framework. All right? So the first thing that needs to happen for culture is a top-down approach in terms of business leaders accepting the implications of going Agile. That means there are certain factors that they look at, like when they want to see in terms of how much development has happened. It's not going to be the same way as in your traditional waterfall methods. I've had situations where people say, we're going Agile, okay? You got to write user stories. You got to make the boards presented in a way that it looks Agile and all of that. But then at the end of the day, ask me, how about your SPIs and CPIs? I'm like, duh, seriously? For those of you who don't know what CPIs and SPIs are, project management terms, right? In terms of cost performance index and schedule performance index, has nothing to do with the way you deliver Agile. If you wanted to go that route, go that route. If not, you're setting up yourself for failure. Fear. So I came down. Like, I've had other speakers speak about this earlier. Like, in fact, there was a nice video that we saw earlier where this guy comes and tells you about an idea, and then everybody shoots them down. It's okay if it was only at that level. But if it comes from a higher level, that guy's job's in jeopardy. He's not going to give you any more ideas. So cut the fear out. It has to be erased. However, many times in Scrum teams, you will find that, hey, we are a team. It's team effort. And then the person hides behind the fact that it's team effort. No, there has to be accountability that has to be weaved in to make sure that, okay, yes, I can do your job as a Scrum Master. I can do your job as a product owner, but only so much. you have to be accountable to what you need to do. It has to be worked in, weaved in. It is a balance that has to come through. And then we come to this little huddle here is basically representing cross-functional teams. So your team, many times, like I said again, many times we have people working in silos. You have the content team working in one silo. You have your services team working in another silo. You have your development UI team in another silo. And there's some of them who are part of a Scrum, but there are some who are not accountable to the Scrum team at all. They're there for notional sake, but if you really need to up it, like in terms of go to someone and say, hey, I'm not getting what I'm expecting to get from this team member, you're waiting for a long time before you hear something because they're not part of your organization. That's where I said it has to be cross-organizational. It cannot be in verticals. Even if it is in verticals, there has to be a mechanism where those resources are very clearly part of the delivery for each sprint that the Scrum team is responsible for. Does it make sense so far? Anyone, any questions? Please feel free to throw it at me even as I'm speaking. I'm okay with that. The next little one there is pretty self-explanatory, I thought. Maybe not. It's empowerment. Make sure every team member is empowered, not just say you're empowered, but make them feel like not just feel, but they should actually know that every part of every little thing that they're contributing makes or breaks the team. That's how important everything is. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, we don't need to hear what the testers are saying. The developers got it. No. If they have something in terms of the development that they are aware of, I'd rather listen to what they have to. They may be wrong. It doesn't matter. I want to make sure every team member is heard and they know that they are as important as everyone else in the whole mix of things. Good things take time. I think I heard that being said as well. Good things take time. Not forever, but they do take time. For instance, maturity model. Like in how long does it take for a team to mature, to be able to assess their capability and things like that? Give them the time. The other one that I'm talking about is do not go in and fall for this big thing about gamification, about healthy competition. There is no such thing as healthy competition. Set them up for ambitious behavior, but not for competition. Help them to be ambitious, to say that I want to do better than what I did before as an individual, as a team. I want to do better than the other team, knowing for myself that they had a better, delivery or something like that. But don't put them doing a tug-of-war kind of situation. That's going to break your Agile framework altogether. This is my experience speaking. There you go again, is trust. The moment you start doing stuff like that, you're going to have people not trust each other. And if there is no trust, there is no true team building, and there is no true team working for the success of the product. So these are all going hand in hand. And again, if there is no trust, there is not going to be any transparency. People are going to pad up whatever they want to say. They say, hey, you know what, if it takes 2 story points to do something, they would put it at 16 story points. What you going to do about it? You'd rather have them be able to trust each other and have the transparency going. So it all circles back to culture drives collaboration. So culture is very important. Training. You have it there. I'm not going to talk a whole lot, but every aspect of the business, and including best practices, standards, regulations, definitions, techniques, and things like estimation, have to be trained for every one of your team members. Sloppy sprints happens when you don't have any of those things, and you have people doing wrong estimations, right? Location, location, location is very key. Yes, sometimes you will have to have people across the globe, but you have good communications so that it's taken care of. Team building, keep it fun. Don't keep it mundane. You don't have to do Agile specific. Go out on a camping trip. Do things of that sort. The last takeaway I would have for you from all of this is doing Agile won't solve your problems. Solving your problems will make you more Agile. Thank you.